So, welcome to today's deep dive. We've got a really fascinating topic today, aiming right at something I think a lot of you listening have experienced, or, well, you're going to experience pretty soon.
Oh, absolutely. It's a universal professional milestone, honestly.
Yeah. So, I want you to imagine a scenario. You've just been promoted. You finally have the corner office.
Nice.
You've got the updated title on your email signature, which feels great. And you've got that salary bump that you spent, like 3 weeks meticulously negotiating?
Right. You've arrived.
Exactly. You've arrived. But then on day one of this new era, Monday morning rolls around, you sit down in the new, ergonomic chair, you look out that slightly larger window, and suddenly this completely terrifying reality just washes over you.
It's a very specific kind of panic, isn't it?
It really is. Because up until last Friday, your entire professional value was dictated entirely by your own output. You were the one grinding through the spreadsheets, writing the code or pitching the clients.
You had total control over your success.
Right. If you worked harder, you won. It was a direct correlation. But as of Monday morning, that equation is just dead. Your success no longer has anything to do with your personal, individual work.
Yeah, that's the scary part. It is now entirely dependent on your ability to compel other people to do the work.
Which is a massive shift. So our mission today is to unpack a masterclass guide we have on the language of leadership.
Yeah.
We are looking at the high-level metaphors and idioms that native English speakers use to navigate management, corporate politics, and just that immense weight of responsibility.
And this is so crucial because you've suddenly crossed this invisible threshold, right? You've gone from an individual contributor to a manager, and the psychological whiplash of that is just intense.
Whiplash is the perfect word for it.
We see this constantly in the corporate world. People are promoted because they're exceptional at their specific technical job. They are the absolute best graphic designer on the floor, or they're the most ruthless, effective salesperson.
Right, they're producing the best tangible results.
Exactly. Yeah. And the organization rewards that technical mastery with a leadership position. But they completely ignore the fact that the skills required to be a great graphic designer have absolutely zero overlap with the skills required to inspire and manage a team of human beings.
Zero overlap. None.
Right. The game hasn't just changed. You are literally playing a completely different sport now.
And that's why we're moving into the deep end today. What we are stripping down in this guide isn't technical vocabulary. We are not discussing how to, track KPIs or optimize the supply chain.
There are plenty of other guides for that.
Yeah, exactly. Today, we are dissecting the language of diplomacy and influence, because the core thesis that the source material really wrestles with is this profound chasm between being a boss, which it defines as someone who simply issues directives from a place of positional authority, and being a leader.
Right, a leader being someone who exerts genuine organic influence over a group.
Which is so much harder to do.
It's incredibly hard. And I think it's important to point out that the reliance on metaphor in this space, in the language of leadership, it's no accident. Leadership is abstract.
Very true.
You cannot put trust or alignment or morale into a spreadsheet. You can't weigh influence on a scale.
Well, it's not a quantifiable metric in the traditional sense.
Exactly. So corporate language borrows heavily from the physical, tangible world to give weight to these abstract concepts. We borrow from nautical engineering, from ancient sports, from early cinema.
Which we're going to get into, yeah?
Yeah, and we use these phrases so casually in the office, but when you actually dissect the mechanics of these idioms, like the guide does, they reveal this massive underlying framework for how human beings respond to authority.
Okay, so let's start with the absolute baseline. Section 1 of the guide. Before you can even begin to think about directing the actions of a team, you really have to look inward.
You have to establish your own behavioral foundation.
Right. You cannot influence others if your own actions don't align with your expectations. You can't ask a group to conform to a standard that you yourself are actively violating.
Because hypocrisy is just the quickest way to destroy influence, period.
It's toxic.
It really is. And from an evolutionary psychology standpoint, humans are hypersensitive to hypocrisy.
Oh, that's interesting. Like, we're hardwired for it.
We are wired to scan our social hierarchies for leaders who say one thing but do another. Historically, that signaled a major threat. A hypocritical leader is an unpredictable leader.
Right, you don't know what they're going to do next.
And an unpredictable leader is dangerous to the tribe. Now, In a modern corporate setting, the stakes might not be literal life or death, but the psychological mechanism inside us is identical.
It triggers the exact same alarm bells.
Exactly. If you declare that the team needs to be ruthless about punctuality, right? But then you stroll into the morning sink 10 minutes late holding a fresh latte.
Oh man, I've seen that exact scenario so many times.
We all have.
Yeah.
And your positional authority, the fact that you are the boss, might force the team to stay quiet in that moment, but your organic influence, it just evaporated.
It's completely gone. And the phrase our source material really zeroes in on here is leading by example, which, I mean, is tossed around in every management seminar on earth.
It's almost a cliche at this point.
It really is. We treat it like a bumper sticker.
Yeah.
But the guide explores the literal implications of this, and honestly, they sound exhausting.
Oh, it's incredibly demanding.
Yeah. You aren't just sending out a memo detailing the rules of engagement. You are tasked with being the living, breathing avatar of those rules. If you demand honesty, you have to be painfully transparent when things go wrong on your end.
It forces the leader to absorb the friction of the standard first. You have to live it before you can demand it.
Let's bring in the source's anecdote here because I think it perfectly illustrates the tension. The text talks about a newly appointed director coming into an established department.
Right. And the instinct for a new director in that situation is usually to assert dominance immediately. You walk in, you point out inefficiencies, you give orders.
You want to mark your territory.
Exactly. But this particular director in the example, she takes a completely different approach. The text highlights that she frequently stays late to help the junior analysts finish their reporting cycles.
Okay, wait. I want to push back hard on this specific example right out of the gate.
Okay, let's hear it.
Because this is where I feel like the theory of leadership violently collides with the reality of having a massive workload.
Fair point.
Let's play this out. I am the new director. I have my own executive level responsibilities. I have budget forecasts, stakeholder meetings, strategic planning.
A full plate.
A completely full plate. If I am staying at the office until 9:00 p.m. every night doing the junior analyst jobs for them, just to prove I'm like a man of the people, I am failing at my actual job.
Right.
I'm just a glorified junior analyst with a bigger salary. So how is that effective leadership? Doesn't leading by example just turn into you doing everyone's job?
That is such a common trap, and it causes immense burnout in middle management. But you are misinterpreting what is actually being modeled in the source's example.
Okay, correct me. What am I missing?
Leading by example is not about task hoarding. It is absolutely not about doing the subordinates' specific technical work for them.
So what exactly is she doing at 9:00 p.m. with the analyst then? If she's not doing the work, why is she there?
She is modeling the work ethic. She's modeling the commitment to the final product and the standard of excellence. Let's say the junior analysts are struggling to pull data for a critical presentation.
Okay.
The director doesn't take the mouse from them and build the pivot table herself. She sits with them, she helps them troubleshoot the logic of the data, and she shows them how she thinks about the problem as a leader.
Ah, okay. She's guiding, not executing.
Exactly. She is demonstrating solidarity. The message she's sending isn't, "I will do your work." The message is, "I will not retreat to my corner office and leave you to drown."
I value this project enough to stay in the trenches with you until the standard is met.
Precisely. It removes hypocrisy from the equation because she's showing she's willing to put in the time.
That distinction changes everything. It's about modeling the energy and the attitude like integrity, not duplicating the literal labor.
Yes.
It actually reminds me of a shift in video game genres.
Oh, how so?
Well, when you're an individual contributor, you're basically playing a solo action game, right? Like a first-person shooter. You have your weapon, you're running through the level, you're eliminating obstacles yourself.
You're entirely focused on what's right in front of you.
Exactly. But when you get promoted, the genre suddenly changes. The camera pans up. You are now playing a top-down strategy game.
I love that analogy.
Yeah, you are managing resources, you're positioning units, you're overseeing the entire map. If you try to jump back down and play the solo action game while you're supposed to be commanding the entire battlefield, your team is going to lose the war.
Because nobody is watching the map.
Exactly. Nobody is steering the ship.
That's a phenomenal way to frame it. The director staying late isn't jumping back into the first-person view. She is simply making sure the units on the ground have the support and morale they need to execute the strategy.
She's just being a really good commander on the map.
Right. She is establishing a culture where the standard of dedication is non-negotiable because she is personally demonstrating it without doing their specific tasks.
Okay, so the behavioral baseline is set. We've removed hypocrisy. You are modeling the integrity and the work ethic. The foundation of influence is built.
Yes, step 1 is complete.
But, and the guide pivots here, trust in a vacuum doesn't generate revenue. Eventually, all that passive modeling has to convert into actual action.
Right. You inevitably reach a point where action must be taken by the group. You have to move from passive modeling to active direction.
Decisions have to be made.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the architecture of alignment.
And alignment requires a definitive catalyst, which introduces our next key phrase from the source, calling the shots.
Right. The text defines this as the person who makes the final decisions and has final authority after a lot of debate.
And the origin story the source provides for this idiom is fantastic. It ties it to sports or directing a film.
Picture a film set, right?
Yeah, picture a film set in the 1920s. You have a massive crew. You've got lighting technicians, set designers, makeup artists, the lead actors, the background extras.
A huge operation.
Right. And everyone on that set is a highly skilled professional, and they all have a distinct, valid opinion on how the scene should look.
The lighting guy wants more shadow.
The actor wants to be center frame.
The set designer wants the background to pop.
Exactly. You have 50 different valid perspectives. But a film cannot be made by committee.
It would be chaos.
Complete chaos. Someone has to step up, look at all that input, synthesize the opinions, and literally call out the sequence. Camera 1, action. They dictate exactly how the action will unfold. They call the shots.
Okay, but wait, I have another question here. The source just went out of its way to establish that a leader is fundamentally different from a boss because a leader influences rather than dictates.
Yes.
Calling the shots sounds entirely dictatorial. It sounds like a boss walking into the room and saying, I don't care what you think, we're doing it my way.
Yeah.
So how does calling the shots fit into influence rather than just dictating?
It's a really important distinction. The mechanism of influence doesn't eliminate the need for authority.
Okay.
It dictates how that authority is deployed. A dictator calls the shots before anyone else is allowed to speak. They operate in a total vacuum.
Just issuing orders from the top down.
Right. But a leader, according to the text, calls the shots only after cultivating an environment of rigorous debate. They actively solicit the conflicting viewpoints of their specialized team members.
They listen to the lighting guy and the actor.
They gather all the data, but they also recognize a fundamental truth of group psychology. Pure consensus is a myth.
Oh man, isn't it? If you wait for a room of 10 smart people to agree 100% on a strategy,
you will never launch the product. Someone will always have a valid reservation. Pure consensus just leads to organizational paralysis.
so the leader has to act.
Precisely. In the context of true leadership, calling the shots is almost an act of service. It's the leader saying, I have heard all of your arguments, the debate has been invaluable, but to save us from endless deliberation, I am now taking the burden of making the final decision.
The text uses the example of a creative director, right?
Yes, a creative director deciding on visual branding. They don't paint every pixel themselves, but after reviewing dozens of competing concepts from their team, they are the ultimate decision maker. They lock in the direction.
And they absorb the risk of being wrong so the team can actually move forward.
Exactly. It's about being decisive only after ensuring the team is heard.
Okay, but before you make that final call, before you officially lock in the direction, you have to ensure the team is actually ready to execute it. You have to ensure everyone is on the same page.
Having a shared understanding, the same goals, and the same interpretation of a plan.
The physical metaphor the source provides for this is so vivid. Imagine a group of people in a room, and they are supposedly reading the exact same book.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
But one person's on page 10, and another person is on page 50.
They are literally talking about different things.
Completely different realities.
Yeah.
The person on page 10 is analyzing a character who's currently alive and happy. The person on page 50 knows that character died in a horrific accident on page 45.
Oh, wow, yeah.
They are holding the same book, they are discussing the same character, but their realities are fundamentally incompatible.
And if you try to build a strategy when your team is experiencing two different realities, the resulting campaign will just be completely schizophrenic.
Exactly. And the terrifying part is how often this happens in real corporate environments without anyone realizing it.
Oh, all the time. We suffer from this cognitive bias where we assume that because words left our mouth, the exact intended meaning successfully entered the listener's brain.
Which is almost never the case.
Never. A leader might say, we need to optimize the user experience.
Sounds simple enough.
Right. But to the lead engineer, Optimize means stripping out features to make the software load faster. To the head of sales, optimize means adding 3 new flashy features to close bigger deals.
And they both nod enthusiastically in the meeting.
Yes, they're both totally committed to optimizing, but they're on completely different pages.
So how do you fix it? The source discusses the practical necessity of alignment and offers a great example. Let's say you are prepping for a major presentation to the board of directors.
High stakes.
Very high stakes. A seasoned leader doesn't just assign slides to different department heads and cross their fingers that it all weaves together on the day of the presentation.
That's a recipe for disaster.
Instead, they hold a quick sync meeting beforehand to ensure the whole team is aligned.
And that sync meeting is not for brainstorming. It is exclusively a calibration event. It's the leader systematically asking, when I say we are targeting the enterprise demographic in Q3, what does that literally look like from your department's perspective?
You are actively hunting for the discrepancies. You are hunting for the person who is on page 10 so you can catch them up to page 50 before you walk into the boardroom.
Because there is nothing worse than standing in front of the CEO, having a board member ask a pointed question, and your marketing lead gives an answer that completely undermines the slide your finance lead just presented.
Your credibility as a leader is just annihilated on the spot.
Instantly. So alignment is not a state you achieve once and then forget about. It requires active, constant maintenance.
Which brings us to the primary tool for that maintenance: keeping someone in the loop.
Keeping team members informed and updated on processes or events.
Right. We throw this phrase into emails all day long. Hey, keep me in the loop on this. But if we break down the visual metaphor of the circle or loop of information, it implies something very specific about power and inclusion.
It really does. A loop is a closed circuit. By definition, a circle creates an interior and an exterior. It creates a boundary.
Right.
If you are inside the loop, information flows to you. You are part of the ecosystem. You're aware of shifting variables and upcoming decisions.
And if you are outside the loop, you are starved of that context. The text explores the emotional weight of this inverse scenario being out of the loop.
It means being ignored or left in the dark.
And it is a profound psychological blow. If a leader consistently leaves a key team member off crucial email chains or informal strategy discussions, that employee doesn't just think, oh, an administrative oversight occurred.
No, not at all. The human brain interprets exclusion as a literal threat. The employee thinks, my leader is gatekeeping information, my input isn't valued anymore, my position in this tribe is precarious.
It destroys the organic influence a leader is trying to build. You can model the best behavior and call the most brilliant shots, but if you weaponize the flow of information, you breed resentment.
It's toxic. Now, the source uses a highly practical example here that I think is brilliant because it highlights the razor-thin line between keeping someone in the loop and just drowning them in micromanagement.
Let's hear it.
The example is a leader who is traveling for 2 weeks. They obviously can't attend every daily stand-up or approve every minor expense while they're gone.
Right, they're out of pocket.
But before they leave, they explicitly ask the team to keep them in the loop regarding client feedback via email.
Notice the surgical precision of that request.
Exactly. The leader does not say, CC me on every internal communication.
If they did that, the team would be paralyzed. They'd spend all day managing the boss's inbox instead of doing the work.
And the leader would be trying to play that first-person shooter game from a hotel room across the country.
Which we established doesn't work. By specifying client feedback, they are drawing a very deliberate boundary around the loop.
They're communicating 2 things. First, I trust you implicitly to manage the internal friction and the daily tasks without my oversight.
And second, I must remain tethered to the external reality of the client because that dictates our macro strategy.
It's a brilliant way to maintain executive presence without suffocating the team's autonomy.
Okay, so let's summarize section 2. We've constructed the ideal scenario. The leader is modeling integrity. They are absorbing the burden of calling the final shots. They are rigorously calibrating the team so everyone is on page 50. And they are maintaining a healthy flow of information through clearly defined loops.
The machine is flawlessly designed.
But as we move into section 3, we have to acknowledge a hard truth. The machine is built out of human beings.
And humans are fragile, volatile, and profoundly complicated.
A leader can make the best decisions, communicate flawlessly, but humans make mistakes. they experience stress, they clash with one another.
You can have the most optimized communication structure in the world, but your lead engineer's toddler might be teething and keeping them up all night.
Or your head of sales might be going through a brutal divorce.
Right. How does the language of leadership address empathy and friction? Because a boss ignores the human element and simply enforces the protocol.
But a leader understands that the protocol must bend to accommodate human reality, or the system will just break, which requires an entirely different vocabulary.
It does, and the text introduces the phrase cutting some slack.
I love this one. To be less critical or strict, giving someone a break because they are under stress or dealing with extenuating circumstances.
And I know you love the origin of this phrase.
I do. I enthusiastically want to introduce the nautical origin of this phrase because it paints such a vivid picture of the physics of pressure. It comes from sailing.
Right, rigging a sailboat.
Yeah, when you are rigging a sailboat, the ropes, the halyards, and sheets are under immense tension. They are holding the sails against the sheer force of the wind.
There's a lot of physical stress on those ropes.
Exactly. If you pull a rope completely taut, pulling it as tight as it will possibly go, it creates maximum efficiency for that exact second.
What?
But it leaves zero margin for error. If a sudden gust of wind hits, or the boat lurches over a wave, that taut rope has no capacity to absorb the shock. It snaps violently.
Disaster.
But if the sailor cuts some slack, if they intentionally loosen the tension just a fraction of an inch, they introduce a margin of safety. The rope can now flex, breathe, and absorb the unexpected impact without breaking.
The parallels to managing high-performing talent are just staggering. Top-tier employees are constantly operating under immense tension. They're holding the sails of your organization against the wind of the market.
They really are.
If a leader demands absolute, unyielding perfection 100% of the time, with zero margin for human error or fatigue, they are pulling the rope taut.
It might look incredibly efficient for one quarter.
But the moment an unexpected life event hits that employee, they will snap. They will burn out, quit, or suffer a severe mental health crisis. High-performing employees aren't machines.
The source offers a highly relatable scenario here. An employee named Sarah, who's historically very reliable, completely misses a critical deadline.
Okay.
Now the boss, the person managing the taut rope, looks purely at the protocol. The deadline was missed. Therefore, Sarah receives a formal reprimand.
The protocol is preserved, but the human is damaged.
Right. The leader, however, investigates the tension before reacting. They discover that Sarah is dealing with a sudden family emergency. Her cognitive load is maxed out.
She has no capacity left.
So the leader cuts her some slack. They extend the deadline, reassign some of her workload, or just say, take the afternoon off, we will handle this. They intentionally loosen the rope so Sarah doesn't snap.
I want to clarify a massive misconception here based on the text, because critics of empathetic leadership often confuse cutting slack with lowering standards.
Oh, that's a crucial distinction. They're not the same thing.
Not at all. Cutting slack is a temporary, localized suspension of tension based on acute circumstances.
It's situational.
Exactly. It is extending grace to a new employee who makes a few procedural errors while they are still learning the ropes, or understanding that an exceptional employee like Sarah might have a subpar week. It is not permanently accepting mediocrity.
It's the long-term ROI of grace. You give Sarah a little slack during the worst week of her life, and you earn this unshakable, fierce loyalty that pays dividends for years.
You can't buy that kind of retention.
You really can't. But let's escalate the stakes. Extending empathy to a struggling individual is one thing. But what happens when the tension isn't just one person? What happens when the entire environment is volatile and extending grace isn't enough to prevent a disaster?
Well, that requires moving from empathy to advanced diplomacy.
Yeah.
You aren't just managing a taut rope anymore. You are navigating a hazardous landscape.
The phrase our text uses here is treading carefully, handling a situation with extreme diplomacy and tact to avoid offending someone or causing conflict in sensitive office politics.
The text dissects these physical metaphors walking across a frozen lake or through a minefield.
Both terrifying scenarios.
Very. When you step onto a frozen lake and you hear the ice groan beneath your boots, your entire physiology changes.
You don't take broad, confident strides.
You don't stomp. You don't jump. You become hyper-vigilant. You calculate the weight distribution of every single footstep with absolute precision, because one miscalculation doesn't just result in a twisted ankle.
It results in you plunging through the ice and drowning, the consequences are catastrophic.
Exactly. You place your feet with precision to avoid disaster.
Okay, I have to ask for the distinction here because I feel like this could get confusing. How do you know when to cut slack versus when to tread carefully? They both involve treating a situation delicately.
It's a great question. Based on the text, it comes down to the source of the fragility. Slack is for individual performance grace. It's applied vertically from a leader downward to an individual to manage personal performance pressure.
You cut slack to protect the employee.
Right.
Treading carefully, on the other hand, is for systemic tension and difficult personalities. It's applied horizontally. You tread carefully to protect the entire organization from detonating.
The source gives a perfect example of this systemic fragility. Imagine your company is going through a massive reorganization.
Always a stressful time.
Very. Budgets are being slashed, departments are merging. There is just an atmosphere of intense paranoia. And two of your senior department heads are openly hostile toward one another, fighting for survival and resources.
That is the frozen lake right there. The ice is incredibly thin.
Exactly. If you walk into a strategy meeting with those two department heads, you don't walk in and say, hey guys, let's all just cut each other some slack today.
Oh, that would be a disaster. That would be perceived as deeply patronizing.
It would probably insult them and pour gasoline on the fire. You have to tread carefully. You have to meticulously pre-plan every word of your opening statement.
You have to anticipate their defensive triggers. You have to structure the agenda so that neither feels ambushed. You are diplomatically calculating every move to ensure the meeting concludes without open warfare.
It requires extreme emotional intelligence and strategic restraint. You are suppressing your own desire to just yell at them to get along because you know the ice won't hold the weight of that outburst.
Wow, okay. So we've explored a massive spectrum here. You've led by example. You've called the difficult shots. You've aligned the team on the same page. You've managed the communication loops. You've cut slack for the struggling individuals. And you've expertly treaded across the minefield of corporate reorgs.
You've done everything right.
You are the textbook definition of a great leader.
And yet, despite cutting slack and treading through minefields, eventually something will go wrong. The law of probability dictates that eventually something will fail catastrophically.
True leadership is defined by how one handles failure. Because it is easy to lead when the charts are going up and the board is applauding.
Anyone can lead when the sun is shining.
Exactly. But true leadership is forged entirely in how you behave when the building is on fire. Which brings us to section 4. Ultimate burden and legacy.
This section introduces arguably the most profound idiom in the entire guide. The buck stops here.
The text defines this as accepting final, ultimate responsibility for an outcome or decision, regardless of who down the chain actually made the mechanical error. It is the categorical refusal to blame your subordinates.
To grasp the immense psychological weight of this phrase, we really have to look at its history. It is a uniquely American idiom.
Made famous by President Harry S. Truman, right?
Yes, he famously kept a sign with those words on his desk in the Oval Office. But to fully understand it, we must understand the negative practice it was pushing against, which is passing the buck.
Which originates from the game of poker in the 19th century. A marker, often a knife with a buckhorn handle, which is where the butt comes from, was passed around the table to indicate whose turn it was to deal the cards. If a player didn't want the responsibility or the perceived bad luck of dealing, they would pass the buck to the next player.
And in corporate psychology, passing the buck to someone else is basically the default human defense mechanism.
It's self-preservation.
Exactly. When a massive failure occurs and the CEO or the board starts demanding answers, the biological instinct is to protect yourself. The boss looks at the CEO and says, "It wasn't my fault. The marketing team gave me bad data. The junior developer pushed the wrong code.
The supply chain manager missed the deadline." They deflect the blame downward. They pass the buck. And I want to point out how terrifying this concept is, because think about what happens when a leader does that. They might temporarily save their own skin in that specific meeting.
The CEO might yell at the junior developer instead.
Right. But the leader has just permanently destroyed their team. They have demonstrated that when the bullets start flying, they will gladly use their own people as human shields.
The trust is irrevocably broken.
So, the buck stops here is the deliberate choice to act as the shield yourself. This is the ultimate expression of executive accountability.
The source outlines this agonizing scenario. Let's say a major project fails to launch on time.
It is a highly visible, embarrassing failure.
Very public. And behind closed doors, you know exactly what happened. You know that a specific lower-level manager ignored a directive, missed 3 deadlines, and caused the bottleneck.
You have the receipts.
You do. But when you are standing in front of the executive board and they demand an explanation, you do not mention that manager's name. You take full public responsibility for the delay. You look at the board and you say, the project failed and the buck stops here. I failed to ensure the protocols were followed.
The ego strength required to do that is just monumental. You are absorbing public humiliation and reputational damage for a failure you did not technically commit.
It's what separates a true leader from a mere boss.
But let's really analyze the mechanics of why this works. Why would anyone willingly absorb that damage? Because ironically, while taking the blame feels like it will destroy your career, the guide suggests it is actually the single most powerful action you can take to cement loyalty.
Absolute fanatical loyalty. Because the team watches you do it. They know who actually made the mistake. They are bracing for impact, waiting for you to throw the lower-level manager under the bus.
And when you stand up and absorb the blow for them instead, you transform the psychological contract.
You are telling them, I will hold you accountable in private, but in public, I am your armor.
And when a team believes their leader will protect them from the executive firing squad, they will innovate faster, take smarter risks, and work with a level of dedication that a fear-based boss could never extract from them.
You unlock a level of psychological safety that drives elite performance.
But let's be devastatingly honest for a moment. Absorbing that pressure year after year, being the armor, taking the hits, constantly monitoring the tension of the rope, navigating the frozen lakes. It is exhausting.
It takes a massive toll on the human nervous system.
You cannot be the shield forever.
You really cannot. The life cycle of a leader must have an intentional conclusion. Power and responsibility are not meant to be held indefinitely by one person.
A great leader knows how to accumulate influence, but an exceptional leader knows when and how to relinquish it. Which leads us to the final concept in the guide, passing the torch.
Handing over a position of power, transitioning a major responsibility, or stepping down for a successor.
The metaphor here is ancient, drawing from the Olympic Games, carrying the flame from one runner to the next to keep the fire alive.
Right. The Olympic flame is ignited, and it is carried across continents by a relay of runners.
One runner takes the torch. They run as fast and as hard as they possibly can, guarding the flame against the wind and the rain.
But they do not run the entire route. They have a designated leg of the race.
And the most critical moment of their entire journey isn't how fast they sprinted. It is the moment they reach the next runner. If they trip during the handoff, or if they refuse to let go of the torch, the flame drops and extinguishes.
The entire relay fails. The profound lesson of the Olympic relay is that the continuity of the flame is infinitely more important than the identity of the runner. The runner is temporary, the fire is enduring.
The source applies this to the corporate life cycle with striking clarity. It discusses how a great leader knows when their time in a role is over.
It describes a CEO named Marcus who steps down after 10 highly successful years at the helm.
Or another leader who spends 2 full years actively mentoring and grooming a replacement before finally passing the torch.
Those examples highlight the difference between passing the torch and simply quitting. Passing the torch is an active, highly intentional process of succession.
Spending 2 years mentoring a replacement means you are carefully tending to the flame. You're transferring institutional knowledge and building the successor's credibility before you let go of the handle.
Look at the corporate failures where founders or longtime CEOs refuse to pass the torch. They hold on to power well past their prime because their entire ego and identity are fused with their title.
They start making erratic decisions, they drive away young talent who have no upward mobility, and eventually the board has to forcibly remove them.
The torch isn't passed, it's dropped in a struggle. To pass the torch successfully requires a massive uncoupling of your ego from your position.
It requires the maturity to look at the organization you built, acknowledge that you have carried it as far as your specific skill set can take it, and willingly step aside so someone with fresh legs can run the next mile.
You accept that you were merely a temporary custodian of the role. It shows that leadership is transient, but the fire of the organization continues.
It is the ultimate act of organizational love. You care more about the survival of the entity than your own prestige.
So if we pull all the way back and look at this entire journey, we have essentially mapped the DNA of professional influence. I want to synthesize this because the source material proves that mastering these idioms is not about memorizing vocabulary. It is about adopting a comprehensive psychological framework.
Right, from the very first day when you establish trust by leading by example and removing hypocrisy.
To building the architecture of action by calling the difficult shots and meticulously ensuring your team is on the same page.
To designing the flow of power by keeping the right people in the loop.
And then navigating the terrifying human elements. Having the grace to cut slack when the tension is too high, possessing the diplomatic restraint to tread carefully through systemic conflicts.
And finding the raw courage to stand in front of the firing squad and declare that the buck stops with you.
And finally, having the wisdom to know when the race is over and passing the torch with grace.
This entire life cycle of professional influence allows you to project an aura of confidence and maturity in any corporate setting. So, speaking directly to you, the listener, whether you are managing your very first team or you're a seasoned executive looking to exert more influence, mastering the nuances behind these idioms is your blueprint.
It's the blueprint for moving from simply managing tasks to truly leading people. Because you cannot force people to follow you. You have to construct an environment where they choose to follow you.
The language of leadership is the language of empathy tempered by accountability. But before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final, highly provocative thought to wrestle with on your own, drawn from the source's prompt for self-reflection.
Let's hear it.
We spent a lot of time discussing the immense weight of the leader acting as a human shield, the concept that true leadership demands you constantly absorb the pressure, that you loosen the rope for your team while tying yourself to an uncompromising standard, and that the buck stops here, meaning you absorb the blame for the failures of others.
It's a heavy burden.
It is. So if that is the true cost of influence, how does a leader protect their own psychological well-being? If you are constantly cutting slack for everyone else, who cuts slack for you? Wow. How do you manage the immense internal tension of extreme accountability, ensuring that you don't become a casualty of your own empathy? Because if your own internal torch burns out from the stress, you will never even have the chance to pass it on.
That is a powerful question.
Think about the tension you are holding right now and ask yourself if you have built a system that allows you to breathe. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us today.
Think about the most incompetent executive at your company right now.
Oh, wow. Right to the point.
Yeah. The one where you constantly look at them and ask yourself, how on earth did they get that job?
We all have at least one person coming to mind immediately.
Exactly. Well, here's the uncomfortable truth for you. They know a language that you don't.
Right.
While you've been, perfecting your spreadsheets, hitting your KPIs, and just obsessing over your deliverables, they have been mastering the invisible architecture of corporate diplomacy.
And I mean, it is a really bitter pill to swallow for high performers.
Yeah.
We operate under this assumption that the corporate ladder is a pure meritocracy based on technical output.
Yeah, that hard work just speaks for itself.
Right. But the source material we are diving into today completely shatters that illusion. We are looking at a masterclass on the language of strategic influence.
Which is fascinating because of where it comes from.
Exactly. It's derived from advanced materials originally designed for English listening practice. But what we found within these linguistic breakdowns is actually it's a stealth blueprint for wielding corporate power.
Okay, let's unpack this. The core premise here is that ascending to the executive level isn't just about what you do, but how you are perceived in the room when the most important decisions are being made.
Yes, the perception is reality.
Right. We are going to explore this invisible architecture today. Our mission for this deep dive is to give you the linguistic and strategic tools to stop feeling like a helpless cog in the machine.
And start acting like a power player.
Exactly. To take back some of that control.
But to do that, we have to start at the foundation, right? Mm-hmm. Before anyone can exert influence or drive an agenda forward, they have to really understand the specific environment they're stepping into.
Which sounds obvious, I guess.
It sounds incredibly basic on the surface. The sources emphasize this concept of reading the room. It is positioned as the absolute hallmark of high emotional intelligence for an executive. Action without observation is, it's dangerous.
Wait, let me push back on that for a second.
Sure.
Is reading the room actually a sign of emotional intelligence, or is it just like a polite corporate term for being hyper-paranoid about a CEO's mood swings?
That's a fair point.
Because if you are constantly reading the room and deciding it's too tense to share a difficult truth, where is the line between being strategic and just being a pushover who is afraid to speak up.
And that is the exact trap middle managers fall into.
Real?
Yeah. They read a tense room and they just retreat.
Yeah.
But true executive presence isn't about retreating. It's about altering the tactic based on the room's frequency. Mastering this dictates timing.
Okay, so it's not about hiding.
No, not at all. If you have an airtight proposal for a massive department pivot and you walk in and notice the CFO's jaw is clenched and the CEO is giving, clipped one-word answers.
Yeah, you probably shouldn't ask for a budget increase.
Exactly. Plunging ahead with your presentation just because it is next on the calendar is professional suicide. The best idea in the world will completely fail if the room isn't ready for it.
So it's like checking the weather before you decide whether to plant seeds or board up the window.
Oh, I love that analogy. Yes.
Yeah.
You have to know the conditions.
And you don't just walk in and drop your entire controversial proposal to see what happens. You use a sonar ping.
A sonar ping.
Yeah, like instead of launching the slide deck, you drop one minor, slightly controversial data point, a sonar ping, and you just watch the room's micro expressions to see how that specific frequency bounces back.
Oh, that's really good.
Right. If the executives bristle at a minor suggested change, you know instantly that the major proposal is dead on arrival.
The sonar ping is a brilliant way to frame it. You are testing the structural integrity of the room before you put weight on it. Mastering this observation phase separates those who force things awkwardly from those who move with strategic grace.
Makes sense. But observation eventually has to give way to action.
Right. You can't observe forever.
Exactly. Let's say you've sent out your sonar ping, the room is receptive, and the timing is right. Our sources outline two very distinct offensive strategies you can take when polite diplomacy runs out.
And you basically have to choose your tactic.
Right. It's either applying brute force or completely innovating.
So let's examine the brute force option first. The linguistic frame the masterclass highlights here is playing hardball.
Which we hear all the time.
All the time. But the origin of this idiom is fascinatingly literal. It stems from the contrast between softball and baseball.
Okay.
Softball uses a larger, slightly yielding ball, and traditionally involves a more, cooperative, relaxed pace. But baseball uses a small, tightly wound, incredibly dense ball. It has zero elasticity.
I mean, if you get hit by it, it breaks bones.
Exactly. That lack of elasticity is the key to the metaphor. To play hardball in business means to adopt a tough, uncompromising stance with zero elasticity.
So no more Mr. Nice Guy.
Right. You stop looking for the win-win scenario, you abandon the cooperative facade, and you leverage pure power to force an outcome, like threatening to pull a massive contract from a vendor unless they drop their price by 20% on the spot.
Okay, but is playing hardball inherently risky?
Sure.
If you play hardball, say you drop that ultimatum on a vendor and threaten to walk away, and the vendor just looks at you and says, okay, fine, we accept your cancellation, call my bluff.
Yeah.
Do you just lose all your leverage right there?
You lose your leverage, your credibility, and your executive presence in one fell swoop.
Wow.
That is the hidden mechanic of hardball that people miss. It requires actual asymmetrical power to back it up. If you threaten to switch suppliers, you must already have the competitor's contract sitting on your desk, ready to sign.
Otherwise, it's just an empty threat.
Exactly. Hardball is a high-risk tactic because it forces a binary outcome within the existing rules of the game. Someone wins and someone loses.
But what if you don't want to play that game at all? What if you want to completely change the rules?
Then you need the second tact.
Right, which brings us to pushing the envelope. This one originates from aerospace engineering.
I love this one.
Yeah, it's so vivid. In flight testing, the envelope is the strict mathematical boundary of what an aircraft is known to safely survive, like speed, altitude, G-force. Test pilots are hired to fly the plane right up to the very edge of those safe limits and then push just a little bit past them.
To see what it can really do. What's fascinating here is how leaders use this specific linguistic frame to manipulate the psychology of their teams.
Oh, how so?
Think about the difference in pressure. When a boss tells a team to play hardball on a project, they are demanding immediate, ruthless ROI, forcing a win within the rules.
Right. Very stressful.
Extremely. But when a boss tells a team they want them to push the envelope, they are functionally granting them the psychological safety to fail. They are redefining the rules entirely. They were saying, it is safe to crash the plane in the simulator as long as we discover a new aerodynamic boundary.
Steve Jobs was legendary for this.
Oh, absolutely.
He didn't tell his design teams to play hardball against BlackBerry's sales numbers. He completely insulated them from traditional quarterly metrics and told them to push the envelope on what a mobile device could be.
Yes.
He gave them the cover to ignore the safe limits of the telecommunications industry, like launching a first-of-its-kind AI marketing campaign today.
And the result of successfully pushing the envelope is what the source material calls a game changer.
Right?
A game changer isn't just a better product. It is a strategic maneuver that completely resets the market. The brilliant thing about a true game changer is that it makes your competitor's current skills completely obsolete.
Because it's a new game.
Exactly. When you change the rules of the game, you force the opponent to start over from zero.
But ascending the ladder and making these massive power plays, whether forcing a win with hardball or obsoleting rivals by pushing the envelope, it creates intense friction.
Yes, it definitely does.
You disrupt the safe, comfortable ecosystems of middle management. And that transition brings us into the survival phase because, well, you can't spend your whole career purely on offense.
No, you really can't. Making power plays inevitably creates hurdles. You will encounter toxic defensive maneuvers from colleagues who feel threatened by your momentum.
It's the darker side of corporate life.
It really is. And the language of corporate survival is incredibly revealing here. The masterclass highlights the phrase throwing someone under the bus to describe a very specific type of betrayal.
Which we say all the time in casual conversation, but if you actually stop and visualize that idiom,
It's terrifying.
it is incredibly violent. You and a coworker are standing on a curb.
Yeah.
A massive 10-ton city bus is careening toward you.
Yeah.
And to save yourself from getting hit, you literally shove your colleague directly into traffic.
It perfectly captures the suddenness, the brutality, and the sheer panic of a corporate betrayal. Throwing someone under the bus almost always happens in high-stakes environments when accountability is demanded. Say a board member asks vice president why a major rollout failed.
Oh, I've seen this.
Right. Instead of taking ownership, contrasting with the classic, the buck stops here leadership mentality, the VP panics, they point to a subordinate, blaming them for a minor coding error that cascaded.
Which is just cowardice masquerading as delegation.
Exactly.
But then the source outlines another idiom for corporate frustration that operates very differently, and that is moving the goalposts.
Yes. Another sports metaphor.
Right. Imagine aiming a soccer ball at the net, lining up a massive project. You kick the ball perfectly, but while the ball is midair, the opposing team, or your boss, literally picks at the goalposts and carries them 10 feet to the left.
It's infuriating.
You miss, but not because your aim was off. In the office, it's unfairly changing KPIs or project requirements after the work has already begun.
You see this constantly in performance reviews. An employee hits all 5 of their required metrics for a bonus. But at the end of the year, management decides to add 3 new retroactive requirements, ensuring the employee doesn't qualify.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. Look at the stark linguistic contrast between these two concepts.
Okay.
Throwing someone under the bus is physical, it's bloody, and it represents a malicious, deeply personal betrayal driven by panic. But moving the goalposts, that is frustrating, it's entirely unfair, but it's nonviolent.
That's a great point.
It perfectly reflects the difference between dealing with a toxic, backstabbing colleague versus dealing with the annoying, bureaucratic, shifting expectations of a massive company.
This raises an important question for you, the listener, to consider. When we visualize executive presence, we almost always picture the offensive moves. You know, the brilliant keynote speech, the aggressive negotiation, the bold innovation.
Good glamorous stuff.
Right. But how much of true executive presence is actually just playing elite defense? How much of your energy as an ascendant leader is spent anticipating who is positioning themselves to throw you under the bus or trying to legally bind a client's requirements so they mathematically cannot move the goalposts?
A massive percentage of it. And frankly, playing defense against toxic colleagues is exhausting.
It burns people out.
You can't spend your whole career dodging buses and chasing goalposts. When faced with these toxic hurdles, direct confrontation often backfires.
Always.
So at a certain point, you have to disarm the bureaucracy itself. How do you get things done when direct confrontation just makes you a bigger target?
Well, perpetual hardball is unsustainable. It burns every bridge you cross. To survive long-term, executives master the pivot from hard offense to the subtle, informal mechanics of soft power.
Soft power.
Yes. The first tactic our sources explore here is greasing the wheels.
Okay, so we are back to machinery metaphors.
We are.
Think about it. You have an old, incredibly rusty machine. The gears are grinding, and it takes immense physical energy just to get it to turn a single inch. You don't hit it with a heavier hammer.
No, that breaks it.
You apply grease. You lubricate the individual components so they move smoothly and without friction.
And in the corporate structure, that rusty machine is the formal bureaucratic pipeline. Getting a budget approved or passing a new initiative. Greasing the wheels is not about bribery. It is about pre-alignment.
Building social capital.
Exactly. It's using small favors or informal networking to remove friction before the formal process even begins.
It's the meeting before the meeting. You don't wait for the official committee gathering to pitch your idea cold. You take the most skeptical department head out for a casual coffee 3 weeks prior.
Yes.
You ask for their advice on a rough draft of your idea. You incorporate one of their minor suggestions so they feel a sense of ownership.
Exactly.
Yeah.
By the time the formal proposal lands on their desk for a vote, the friction has already been removed. It glides through the approval process because you grease the wheels with their own ego.
Which brings us to the final and undoubtedly the most difficult aspect of soft power, and that is playing second fiddle.
This one is so hard for ambitious people.
Right. This idiom comes from the symphony orchestra. The first violinist is the star concertmaster. They get the solos, they get the applause, they are the undeniable center of attention.
Naturally.
The second violinist plays a supporting harmony. The piece falls apart without them, but they are deliberately not the star.
In a professional setting, playing second fiddle means voluntarily taking a subordinate role to a dominant colleague or boss.
Willingly stepping out of the spotlight.
Right. The masterclass emphasizes that highly effective leaders know exactly when to suppress their own desire for the spotlight in order to serve a larger strategic goal. Like learning the inner workings of a new industry from a brilliant but egotistical founder.
So how does the listener know when it's strategically smart to step back, swallow their pride, and play second fiddle, versus when it's time to demand the first chair? Because, if you just play second fiddle indefinitely, don't you permanently brand yourself as an assistant? How do you avoid getting stuck there?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, soft power is often more durable than hard power. But managing your own ego to play second fiddle requires supreme internal confidence because you are playing a long game.
Okay.
You avoid becoming a permanent assistant by attaching a timestamp and a learning objective to your subordination. You aren't playing second fiddle because you lack ambition. You are playing it to extract the concertmaster's sheet music.
Ah, I see.
Once you have absorbed their network, their strategies, and their institutional knowledge, your timestamp expires. And then you move to a different orchestra where you take the first chair.
So what does this all mean? We started out looking at the sleek surface of the corporate world, but our sources have taken us deep into its invisible architecture.
We really have.
We've seen that the journey from being a helpless cog to a strategic power player requires a complete linguistic and behavioral shift.
It is a deliberate evolution. It begins with passive observation, having the emotional restraint to read the room and send out a sonar ping before you act.
Right.
And it requires knowing the precise mechanics of your offensive options, knowing when to rely on the brute force of hardball and when to challenge the status quo entirely by pushing the envelope to create a game changer.
We navigated the defensive maneuvers required to survive the dark side of office politics, spotting the panicked colleagues ready to throw you under the bus and anticipating the bureaucratic middle managers trying to move the goalposts.
And finally, we arrived at the absolute mastery of soft power, understanding how to use the meeting before the meeting to grease the wheels of a rusty bureaucracy and having the sheer ego control to play second fiddle when the long game demands it.
The overarching lesson from these materials is profound. Mastering these specific concepts doesn't just improve your English vocabulary, it makes you fluent in the language of power. Once you know these frameworks, you can decode the behavior of every executive around you.
You see the structure, not just the finish.
So to you listening, our final send-off is this. Keep practicing your executive presence. Observe the hidden dynamics in your very next meeting. Read the room, drop a sonar ping, and when the timing is absolutely right, never be afraid to push the envelope in your own career.
But I want to leave you with one final, slightly different thought to mull over.
Okay.
We spent this entire deep dive unpacking the idioms that dictate professional success. We have playing hardball, moving the goalposts, pushing the envelope, greasing the wheels.
Lots of idioms.
So many of our concepts for corporate survival are deeply rooted in competitive sports, games with clear winners and losers, and cold, unfeeling machinery.
Yeah, that's true.
If our entire linguistic framework for work is based on these concepts, does that mean the modern corporate world is fundamentally designed to be played like a ruthless game rather than lived as a human community. And if it is a game, well, what are the unspoken rules of the game that you are currently playing?